If I can direct everyone's attention to Mr. Paul Krekorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, it's always such an honor for all of us to be in the presence of so many men and women who've served our country in the armed forces. And on today, the day after Veterans Day, I'd like everyone in this chamber who has served our country, every veteran, to please stand and be recognized.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Yesterday, throughout these United States, in bustling cities and in quiet towns, Americans gathered, as we do here, to honor the men and women who disrupted their own lives and too often sacrificed their own lives in service to our country so that all Americans might live in freedom. There's an irony in the fact that we celebrate Veterans Day on the day of the armistice of World War I. That was the day when the guns finally fell silent after those many years of that terrible war, the war that was known at the time as the war that would end all wars. And had it been so, perhaps we wouldn't have needed to count on future generations of noble American men and women to step forward and serve. But of course we know that that moment of global peace wouldn't last for very long, and each generation of Americans that followed would be called upon. And in vast numbers, they've responded to that call. Grocers and mail carriers and nurses and teachers who've been asked by their country to rise to the occasion, and they did. These were not action heroes in movies or mythical gladiators from legendary tales. They were ordinary Americans who, to a person, would have preferred to stay home with their families and their friends, but instead they stepped up to serve a greater cause. If you've ever been to the landing beaches at Normandy, you can understand why volumes have been written about the D-Day invasions in terms of its vastness. You gaze out at this endless sea and you imagine it covered with ships and landing crafts that made up the largest amphibious assault in history. You see these beaches stretching into the distance and you can envision them covered with these massive waves of men, 150,000 in all, desperately scrambling forward into enemy fire. And you see the U.S. cemetery with row after row after row of white crosses and stars of Davids and other graves that seem to extend to the horizon. And when we see things like that in popular culture or in person, you can easily lose sight of the fact that even world-changing events of that kind of a magnitude really come down to individual people, individuals who make that individual choice to overcome their own terror and do the unnatural thing of putting their own lives in grave danger. And in doing so, those people, just as the men and women who are here today, gained their place in the long and strong chain of sacrifice that connects one generation of ordinary American heroes to the next. It's a chain that began when the farmers of Concord put aside their pitchforks and picked up their muskets and forced the King's troops to retreat at the North Bridge. It's a chain that continues to this day as the volunteers of our military bravely endure the nearly unimaginable chaos and violence of places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And let's remember that fully a third of those who are now serving in those theaters are members of the National Guard who, have tried to continue to live their normal life, but they've been called up to service as our regular forces have. Over the course of our history, the world has certainly changed, and our armed forces have changed with it. But the valor, the dignity, and the courage of the men and women in uniform remain the same. Each of them in each generation has left a legacy of freedom, and they taught their children and their children's children the value of sacrifice and devotion and service, and most of all, love of country. The citizen soldiers who are here with us today, the honorees of each of our 15 council districts, have become our teachers. Throughout their service, they remind us of the extraordinary potential of ordinary Americans. They remind us of the principles for which our country stands, and they remind us of the courage and commitment necessary to maintain those principles. They remind us of both the blessings we enjoy and the cost we must bear as citizens of the last best hope of this earth. We are in debt to all of them, and we thank them. May God bless all who have served, bless the souls of those who have departed, and always bless the country for which they sacrificed. Thank you, one and all, to our honorees, the Veterans of the Year for the City of Los Angeles. Now, members, each of the veterans has already received a certificate of recognition out in the rotunda, but I'm going to introduce each of them individually and then ask that as we introduce them, if they could please rise. And you've seen on the video screens some of the photographs of these men and women in uniform. And I'm going to try to, I don't know if we can keep that roll going as I read their names, but let's see.
But before you start, Mr. Krekorian, thank you. Thank you very much. This is a very special recognition, and to do the day after Veterans Day. So thank you for being so sensitive and handling this for the City of Los Angeles. The floor is yours. Thank you so much.
All right.
But you're that kind of guy.
But let's... So our Veterans of the Year, for Council District 1, represented by Gil Cedillo, Roy Payan of the United States Navy. Roy, if you can stand. Roy Payan served in the Navy for 12 years, retiring with the rank of Chief. Dedicated to serving his country, he continues to serve his community as president of the Montecito Heights Neighborhood Association, a representative on the Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council, and as a CERT captain. Roy Payan of the United States Navy. Representing Council District 2, my district, Lee Adrian of the United States Air Force.
Give him a round of applause.
Lee Adrian grew up in North Dakota and enlisted in the Air Force in 1966. He served on Okinawa from 1969 to 1974 when he was honorably discharged during the Vietnam era. Beyond his service in the Air Force, he's continued to impact and improve our community as a member of the Strathern Neighborhood Watch Group, as a volunteer and an active member in a church. He's been very helpful in a lot of the community beautification projects we're working on in Council District 2, and he recently took a trip to Alaska to help build homes for families in Anchorage with Habitat for Humanity, and he's planning another trip for next year. Lee Adrian.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Representing Council District 3, Mr. Blumenfield's honoree, Stephen Polidis of the United States Army. Stephen Polidis is a World War II veteran who served in both the Army and the Air Corps. In 1944, Stephen was a radio man on a B-17 bomber when it was shot down in Croatia. After the war, Stephen entered the private defense industry. Today, at a spry 97 years old, Stephen continues to serve the community by tutoring advanced math to students at Welby Way Elementary, and he's active in Operation Gratitude and Wings Over Wendy's. Stephen Polidis.
All right.
Representing Council District 4, Councilmember Tom LaBonge, Joseph Pietroforte of the United States Army.
All right.
And that uniform still fits him perfectly, as you can see. Joseph Pietroforte served in the Army under General Patton in Company G of the 3rd Army as a rocket launcher or bazooka man. His last rank in the Army was as a sergeant. He was awarded the Silver and Bronze Stars and the Rifle and Wreath. He served 9 months in combat. After the war, Mr. Pietroforte eventually moved to the San Fernando Valley and opened the Victory Drive-In in North Hollywood, which every Valley member is well familiar with, in 1949. Today, he serves as the official historian for Company G of Patton's 3rd Army, Joseph Pietroforte. Representing Council District 5, Councilmember Paul Krekorian's honoree, Mike Stajura of the United States Army. Mike Stajura served as an officer in the Army from 1995 to 2002. He first enlisted in 1990 and entered the United States Military Academy at West Point. He served in Bosnia-Herzegovina, Honduras, and Korea. He moved to Westwood in 2003 and was a founding member of the Westwood Neighborhood Council, serving for 4 years. He's currently completing his doctoral studies at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. Mike Stajura. Representing Council District 6, the honoree of Councilmember Nuri Martinez, Olivia J. Chavez of the United States Marine Corps. Hoorah! Captain Olivia J. Chavez has had an amazing career that began in 1992 when she enlisted in the United States Marine Corps out of San Fernando High School. Captain Chavez is a decorated combat helicopter pilot, having logged 170 combat hours during her deployment to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Olivia is currently serving as a media officer with the 201st Press Camp headquarters in Bell, California. She's been serving our country for 21 years. Olivia Chavez. Representing Council District 7, Councilmember Felipe Fuentes' honoree, Clifford Kellgreen of the United States Navy. Cliff Kellgreen enlisted in the United States Navy, where he served from 1980 to 1986. He served as a bosun's mate during the time of the Cold War conflict and was stationed in San Diego, Beirut, and off the coast of Nicaragua. He currently serves as the commander for the very active American Legion Post 377 of Tujunga. On a yearly basis, he organizes a Veterans Day tribute along Foothill Boulevard and all of the important Veterans Day activities that happen in the Sunland Tujunga area. Cliff Kellgreen and Post 377 leads the way. Clifford Kellgreen. Representing Council District 8, Councilmember Bernard Parks honoree, Robert Holman of the United States Army. Sergeant Robert Holman hails from Memphis and served in the Army between 1948 and 1951. During the Korean War, he was wounded and then captured by Chinese forces. Sergeant Holman is believed to be the first Memphis prisoner of the Chinese to be returned home safely. He now lives in Los Angeles and was the first person to start a phone answering service here in the Los Angeles area. Mr. Robert Holman. Representing Council District 9, the honoree of Councilmember Curran Price, Felipe Tejas of the U.S. Army. Felipe Tejas enlisted in the U.S. Army in 2001. In 2003, his unit was activated for combat and he was deployed to Iraq. While in Iraq, he was promoted to E5 Sergeant, and in 2004, he was hit by a car bomb while on patrol. He suffered injuries to the left side of his neck, but he continued serving. While in the Army, Felipe received the Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, and many, many more. Felipe Tejas of the United States Army. Council District 10.
Yay!
The honoree of Council President Herb Wesson. Angela Adams of the United States Army. Angela Adams is a 30-year veteran of the United States Army Reserves. She's a retired Command Sergeant Major who has served in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, in Heidelberg, Germany in support of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. During her illustrious military career, she received the Bronze Star while in Iraq and 2 meritorious service medals. Veteran of the Year for Council District 10, Angela Adams. Representing Council District 11, the honoree of Councilmember Mike Bonin, Aisha Robinson of the United States Army. Aisha, and we have several generations of veterans here, you see, which is great to see. Aisha Robinson is a 25-year-old veteran of Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. She served in the Army from 2011 to 2013 and was stationed in Vilseck, Germany for most of her enlistment. PFC Robinson served as a medic for the Army. She received the National Defense Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Medal, and an Army Service Ribbon, and she's continuing her medical studies now that she's back home. Welcome home, and let's recognize the honoree, the Veteran of the Year for Council District 11, Aisha Robinson. Council District 12, the honoree of Councilmember Mitchell Englander, Andre Vandervalk of the United States Army. Andre Vandervalk was drafted and served as a sergeant with a combat unit in Vietnam, attached to the Army SIS with a top-secret clearance. Andre served 13 months in combat, including the Tet Offensive in 1968. Upon his return to the United States in 1968, he immediately returned to his job with Union 76, now Unical, and he returned to school while working full-time and supporting his wife and his 3 kids. He worked at Union 76 until his retirement in 1989, and as Mr. Englander mentioned in the rotunda, has continued to be very actively involved in our community, serving in a variety of ways in Council District 12 and throughout the San Fernando Valley. The Veteran of the Year for Council District 12, Andre Vandervalk. Representing Council District 13, the honoree of Councilmember Mitchell O'Farrell, Jack Vergara of the United States Army. When Pearl Harbor was bombed on December 7th, 1941, Jack Vergara was 12 years old. Shortly thereafter, Manila was bombed as well. And the following year, at 13 years old, Jack joined the underground movement as a guerrilla fighter against the Japanese invaders. On December 28th, a year after the beginning of World War II, he was recognized as a registered member of the Philippine Guerrilla Forces. Jack's mission was to locate the whereabouts of the Japanese and figure out their plans. In August 1945, Jack was honorably discharged from the Commonwealth Army of the United States of America under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. The honoree, the Veteran of the Year for Council District 13, Jack Vergara. Representing Council District 14, the honoree of Councilmember Jose Huizar, BM1 John Ruiz Guerrero is a John Ruiz Guerrero. John Ruiz Guerrero is a 14-year veteran of the United States Navy. He's currently a recruiter stationed in Hollywood. He was born and raised in El Sereno, where he currently resides. He has received 5 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals. As you can see, the hardware on his chest, I think he walks sideways from all the weight on the left side of his chest there. He's also received medals from the Coast Guard and the Army. He's been part of many humanitarian efforts and has gone beyond the call of duty to help people in need. He currently serves on the El Sereno Veterans Monument Committee and many other veterans committees. Let's hear it for the Veteran of the Year for Council District 14, John Ruiz Guerrero. And finally, the Veteran of the Year for Council District 15, the honoree of Councilmember Joe Buscaino, Richard Cisneros of the United States Army. Richard Cisneros served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. In his first tour, he was in the 1st Cavalry Division, A Company, and on the second tour, he was in the 25th Infantry Wolfhounds. Richard served 6 years in the Army and was awarded the National Defense Medal, the Purple Heart, the Vietnamese Gallantry Cross, and many more. He retired from the Army as a buck sergeant and continues to be active in his community in Council District 15. Richard Cisneros, Veteran of the Year for Council District 15. And with that, Mr. President, thank you all members for participating in this recognition of our Veterans of the Year.
Thank you again, Mr. Krekorian. Now, it's my understanding that Mr. Labange has an additional honoree.
Absolutely. And I
Mr.
thank you,
Labange.
Mr. President. Mr. Krekorian, give him a hand and his staff for organizing this alongside our first. I want to introduce Sergeant Eric King. Sergeant King, United States Marine, served in Iraq for 6 years.
Let's give him a round of applause.
He's my deputy in Sherman Oaks. Good job there. But more importantly, Mr. President, because as things happen, the real special, all of you are special. Joe, you're very special. But my district is Valley and City, Metropolitan. So I wanted to get someone from the metropolitan area. Joe's from Sherman Oaks, hail to the Valley. But Bud Rice right here. Stand up, Bud, right there. Bud Rice, 22 years old, United States Air Corps. Listen to this. Bud was the first pilot in the 37th Squadron of the 316th Troop Carrier Group of the Air Corps. Bud was 22 years old when he flew a C-47 in the D-Day invasion. His mission dropped 21 paratroopers into parts of France in a strategic effort in that battle at D-Day. He's a pilot who was part of the aerial invasion for Normandy after 18 months of intense training. He's a wonderful man. The plan was, when they came in, is to keep strict radio silence, fly in a formation tight, and deliver the paratroopers safely in their spot zones in France. Bud was a great flyer, and we're very proud of him. He's married to his beautiful wife, Betty, for 67 years. Very special there. And Mr. President, you bragged this morning about the Ethics Commission. Well, Bud is a great member of St. Brendan's Church, and he will tell me every time I'm not there, Joe Buscaino. He'll say, "Where are you, Tom? Where are you?" Bud has got great eyes. He's got great heart. He's our hero on this side of the mountain, as Joe is on the other side of the mountain, as all are on any mountain. Let's hear it for our veterans. Thanks, Bud.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much. I would just like to give a special thank you to Mr. Holman, 8th District resident. Also, although it was stated that he was wounded in the war, his family wanted to make sure we specifically stated he was a recipient of the Purple Heart. He served in Korea, but also I wanted him to know that last Friday the council adjourned in memory of Sergeant Manning, who also was a prisoner of war in Korea. Unfortunately, he passed away, and it took 60 years for his remains to return to the United States, and his family buried him at Inglewood Cemetery just last Friday. And so we just wanted to say thank you for your service, and also for everyone's awareness. October 31st was National POW Day, and so you're getting honored twice in the sense of the National POW Day and veterans, and also the fact that you served in this community and then later came here as a business person. Thank you.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to also thank Mr. Krekorian for bringing this very important day to City Hall. I want to acknowledge my colleague Bob Blumenfeld as well. Yesterday we had the San Fernando Valley Veterans Day Parade. 11 years that we've been doing it. Both Bob and I were staffed to then Congressman Howard Berman, myself to Council President Padilla, and we brought that parade, which is the only parade in the San Fernando Valley, to honor veterans. But thank you, Mr. Krekorian, for mentioning that Dan Kellgreen is a commander for the American Legion Post 377, but he also does so much more to recognize veterans every single year. He helps organize a Veterans Day tribute along Foothill Boulevard by placing American flags on the boulevard so that everybody can recognize that their contribution to our great society. He also enlists the help of Boy Scout Troop 315 to do that, to teach the younger folks about what service is and how important it is. He also organizes a yearly service for Memorial Day at Sunland Park to remember the men and women who have so contributed in the highest way possible by sacrificing themselves for this country's armed forces. He's helped partner with the Sunland Tujunga Rotary to install banners also along the boulevard there to recognize men and women. He's done so much, and as a post commander, we're terribly proud to have shared him, Mr. Krekorian, because I know that he was your constituent for a little while during CD2. But give him a big round of applause. Thank you much for your service.
Mr. Weezer.
Thank you. Just briefly, I too want to thank Councilmember Krekorian for doing this for our veterans and recognizing our outstanding citizens from the city who have served our country and continue to provide for our communities. And my nominee, John Reese Guerrero, I wanted to mention he's been working on a committee that just this weekend we broke ground on a memorial to our veterans there in El Sereno. So I wanted to thank you in particular for that. That is going to be something that as people drive in from the San Gabriel Valley into Los Angeles and leave from our city to the San Gabriel Valley in that busy corridor in Huntington Drive, people are going to look at that, reflect on that, and thank our veterans. And myself, as an immigrant born in Mexico, coming here as a young age, I'm proud of my culture, I'm proud of where I come from, but I'm equally proud to be an American citizen. And when I think of that, I think of our veterans and those who have served in the armed forces to defend and protect our country and the ideals we believe in. Thank you so much to all our veterans. God bless you all.
Mr. Bloomingfield.
Just want to add my voice and certainly thanking Mr. Krekorian for bringing this forward. And I wanted to make a special mention of Stephen Politis, who was here. It was part of Wings Over Wendy's, the group that we had honored just the other week, where they get together for camaraderie. He is one of these amazing people, and you alluded to his story where he got shot down in the B-17 over Croatia. The underground found him, patched him up, and then he was back online fighting again. And he has just done so much in our community. And the other thing was mentioned, he was in private industry, but what you may not realize, he was part of an elite team that sent us literally to the moon. He was part of the engineers that were part of that lunar group, and I'm just so proud to know him. We've gotten to know each other over the years, since 6 years ago when I first came to Wings Over Wendy's in the assembly and celebrated your birthday. He's 97 years old and just doing amazing. So wanted to recognize you. Thank you.
Mr. Price.
I just joined my colleagues in just saluting the outstanding job that the veterans have done here and abroad, and you continue to be a source of inspiration for us all with your service. And I'm just especially proud to give a shout out to Felipe Teles. Felipe, although born and grew up in Huntington Park, graduated from Fremont High in the 9th District, and so we're very proud of the commitment that he made early on. He enlisted in December 2001. By 2003, his unit was activated and deployed to Iraq, where he served with great distinction. We learned of the unfortunate accident, which left him injured, several operations, pieces of snapple still in the body. But you certainly continue to be a positive role model. Since your return, have been a positive role model, not only to the family, but to your community. And so, again, we just want to salute you. We thank you. We appreciate you. We're proud for your service. Continued success.
Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, of course, I want to join in thanking Mr. Krekorian for bringing this forward and giving us a chance to honor all those folks that have risked their lives for us and our freedom. I'm proud to have a distinguished veteran in my district with us today, Mike Stajura. I'm particularly proud not just because of his service in the military, but because of his service to the community. He was not only a founder and board member of the Westwood Neighborhood Council, but we work with him frequently on emergency preparedness events, and particularly he does an annual event in Westwood that would never happen without all of his hard work. So I am thrilled to have the opportunity to honor one of the most active people in the CD5 community.
Mr. Cedillo.
I'm happy to stand to honor Roy Payan. Many of you know him for his work with the city, the author of the 5-Step Disaster Preparedness Plan, and for his work that he does with us. But many of you don't know that he is the champion of Flat Top Hill. He's called the guardian of Flat Top Hill. It's an important area that we're saving, that we will be coming into possession of. And so he is protecting this green space up in Montecito Heights, where he is a tremendous, tremendous community leader. I also want to acknowledge all the World War II Filipino veterans. They set a great example, provided a great service for our nation, and we owe them a debt, Mr. Speaker. In fact, we actually do owe them a debt. We had promised them veterans benefits equal to all our veterans, and yet, because of some budgetary matter that followed, we forgot what they had given us and failed to make that debt come true. You know, Mr. Speaker, that when we were in the legislature, California did its share to acknowledge those veterans, but our country still owes them a debt that needs to be paid sooner than later. And so I want to acknowledge all the Filipino veterans of World War II and Roy Payan, who follows in their tradition of service and commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo, and I join you with that. Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President, and let me also thank Mr. Krekorian for putting this presentation together. Colleagues, this is Los Angeles. Nonagenarians and 20-somethings, white, black, Latino, Asian American. We have a cross-section of Los Angeles here, just as the military represents a cross-section of this country. We now have in our military not just men, we now have women. We now have in our military not just heterosexuals, but gays and lesbians and bisexuals and the trans community as well. The military is changing and Los Angeles is changing, and I'm so glad that we have honorees today that reflect that. It's also important to note that, like my honoree, Ms. Robinson, many members of the military carry on a family tradition of serving in the armed forces. Ms. Robinson notes that she's a small-town girl who joined the military to make her family proud, as I am absolutely certain that you have done, and to carry on the family's history. She has family members who served in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. It's also for her personal that her military service inspire other generations of her family. She believes that by serving, she can inspire a younger generation of her family members and inspire them to gain purpose and structure and ultimately a career. I want to thank you and everybody here so much for your service. We can't thank you or the veterans in this country enough. Thank you.
Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me rise and join the choir of thanks and praise, and also thank Mr. Krekorian for an incredible presentation. And I loved how you actually had an opportunity to show each and every honoree a photo up on the screen. So thank you to you and your team for putting together this presentation. Let's give Mr. Krekorian a round of applause and his entire team. Thank you. And Mr. Cisneros, who often we remember where we were when we turned 21 years old. Well, Mr. Cisneros from Wilmington, California, was in flight on his 21st birthday on his way to Vietnam. And not only he served with courage, he also decided to take a second tour to Vietnam and go back and served 2 full tours of duty in Vietnam. Today he stands before us with honor, integrity, and grace. And Richard, we thank you for your ongoing efforts in promoting all the work that you've done with the VFW in Wilmington as well. Whenever we bury a vet VFW from Wilmington, the Honor Guard is there representing. And we had an amazing weekend of reflection at the USS Iowa on Saturday and Sunday and yesterday as well. And Our remarks really emphasize the importance of when someone, a veteran, serves our country, we need to be sure that we have a job and a bed waiting for them upon their return. And we recognize Mayor Garcetti's efforts by developing the Veteran Affairs Department. And we recall and reflect that when we go to our place of worship, we do so without fear. We need to remember and thank a veteran for that. Or when we speak in this chambers freely, without fear, we need to thank a veteran for that. Or when we cross city limits without fear, without a checkpoint, we remember and thank a veteran for that. So with that, we thank all of our veterans who've been acknowledged and honored here today. Thank you for your service. May God bless you, and thank you for this opportunity to allow us to recognize you.
Mr. Englander. No.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so much has been said, but we can never say enough. So I just want to stand and thank you. Thank you for so much and what you've done. I want to single out Andre van der Valk as well. He and his wife and Linda's here. I asked Linda to stand up and be recognized for a minute as well. While we are honoring our veterans, and last Friday, my colleague and I, Bob Blumenfield, brought Wings Over Wendy's here to City Hall. I believe that we need to honor all of you each and every day for what my colleague spoke about, but beyond that. I want to also recognize not just our veterans. I want to recognize the families of anybody who served. Because quite frankly, and as a child and son of a 100% disabled vet, it's also and often the families, the ones that are at home, while those are serving overseas, are the ones who paid the ultimate sacrifice, are the ones who are caring for and helping with when they come home. And so to recognize our veterans, but also the veteran families, the men and the women, the husbands and the wives, the mothers and the fathers, the aunts and the uncles, the children and grandchildren, those who continue to live with what has occurred and what's happened and what continues. I want to recognize them as well, because they too help so much and provide that stable environment for our communities. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Miss Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'm last, right?
Not exactly.
Oh, wow. Wishful thinking.
Close to.
Congratulations to all the veterans for your service to this country. I just want to acknowledge, if I can, have the women serving in the military please stand. Thank you very, very much for everything that you do. And congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. Labange.
In all my speed this morning, I forgot to mention there's over 2,000 Los Angeles City employees who in the last decade have served in a variety of roles, including some have lost their life in combat missions. And let's remember all the city employees who are veterans and give them a big hand. Including Mr. Krekorian reminded, including Mayor Garcetti. Let's give them all a hand. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All the members have spoken. I want to end this by indicating to each and every one of you that I don't have the words, the oratorical ability to thank you for the great service that you've done for this country that we all love. But to tell you that many of us recognize, as we have done the various things that we wanted to do in our life, we were able to do that because you were this part of this shield that always protected us and took care of each and every resident of the greatest country on the planet. And for me to stand with one of my constituents, Miss Adams here, 30 years, Sergeant Major, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, a volunteer in the city. And I want to acknowledge that she's also a member of the city's family, working as the assistant director for Section 8 in the Housing Authority. So with all of that said, know that from the bottom of all of our hearts, we appreciate your service to this great country. God bless you. God keep you. Everyone, let's give a round of applause to some of the bravest people that we know. Stand up one more time and receive the recognition that you deserve. Thank you all. Thank you. Mr. Krekorian will be escorting you along with our sergeants into the back. We'll be taking some photographs, and there'll be an opportunity for each and every one of you to go back and get a photo. But one more round of applause. Again, thank you so very much.